Okay, so our last invited speaker for today is Matt Kaufman, who I don't have a title for, so go ahead, Matt, with whatever you'd like to speak about.
All right, thanks. Well, we have that in common. I don't have a title either. Uh, so I was appreciative of the invitation to participate in this celebration of Jim, but like Manny, I was a bit nervous about accepting it. Unlike Manny, it's been 40 years since I've done research in logic. So I have even less technical to say than in the previous talk, but I'm happy to contribute what I can because I want to contribute to the celebration. So I'm just going to tell some stories, and I hope all of you feel free to butt in and tell your own stories as I go along, and also to make corrections or additions, whether they're true or false, as we go
You
along.
want to pull some of these shades up or down, please?
Yeah.
Up.
No modal logic?
The other one's down.
What's that?
No modal logic?
No modal logic?
Right, they have to be true or false?
Oh, I see. It can be any valued logic. I'm so sorry. I don't mean to, I want to be, I believe in DEI. Okay. I believe, we'll be inclusive here, any logic you want.
Oh.
I don't remember when I first met Jim, but maybe it was during that logic year in Connecticut in 1979 when there was a conference mentioned earlier. But I got to know him better when we were both invited, among many others, to write a book that was mentioned in a couple talks earlier. I was surprised to hear it mentioned. I didn't know anybody remembered model theoretic logics, but yeah, there were, I think, 20 chapters in that book. It was a great big thick book, as mentioned earlier. So anyhow, Jim and I had adjacent chapters, and there were a couple of meetings of the authors. And at the second meeting, Jim and I were sitting there, and we were having, I don't know if it was breakfast or lunch, some meal. And Jim, you mentioned to me, we have a visiting position open at Connecticut next year. And I think you said it in a really offhanded way. I didn't take it as an invitation or anything, just kind of mentioned it. I don't know what your motivation was, but at any rate, I said, "Ooh, really? Do you think I could apply?" And Jim said, "Well, yeah," or something. And I did, and I wound up going. And it was a great year. I made the right decision. Working with Jim was a blast. I remember one particular time where we were both working on some problem, and Jim, maybe you remember what it was, but we were working on the same thing probably for several days, and we were stuck. And we met in your office. We were scheduled to meet in your office the next morning or some morning, and we got there together. And we both were very excited and couldn't wait to tell each other that we'd solved it. So we solved the same thing at the same time, and it was just fun to both have solved it at the same time. I just remember that being a blast. Jim, do you remember what that was, though?
I don't remember that at all. No.
It had to do with lofty models, something Jim and I were
Okay.
working on at the time, but I don't remember, maybe it was some equivalence of lofty models to something else. And speaking of lofty models, Jim, you raised a question something like 40 years ago, maybe longer, on whether there's an omega-1 like lofty model. And I'm just curious, is that still open?
Yeah, no, I don't know the answer.
Okay.
I have, and in the past thought I had an answer, but it didn't work out.
Yeah, so I guess maybe I can sort of feel pretty good about having been involved in something that ultimately led Jim to stump himself. Okay, so anyhow, yeah, that was a long time ago. I should have said an omega-1 like lofty model that is not recursively saturated. But anyhow, I'm not going to say what lofty is, partly because I'm only about 90% sure I remember. Not long after I left academia and the world of research into logic, I got a paper in the mail from Jim called Remarks on Weak Notions of Saturation in Models of Piano Arithmetic, which actually appeared in the JSL in 1987. And what was kind of interesting about this paper when I got it in the mail, I looked at it and, it was authored by Matt Kaufmann and Jim Schmerl. and I'd never seen this paper. So, I remember asking Jim, really? And Jim, you insisted that I should be a co-author. You had some lame excuse like, well, this was work we'd done together. I still suspect that this was your work. I really don't know. I can't remember if I even read the paper, but
I thought, no, I thought that we did it all together. Yeah.
well, okay. So you thought that, but we've established that your memory, well, at any rate, I take this just as a sign of your generosity. I wanted to tell this story because, and apparently I'm not the only one, because Manny, you told a story similar to this about finding a paper that Jim wrote and suddenly you're a co-author. So yeah, that was a story to show how generous you are, Jim. And it wasn't just the paper, like this seminar that was mentioned in the preceding talk. I went to some of those in 1982 to 83 when I was there, and Jim always gave me a ride, and we always had a good time. Oh, by the way, I just remembered this a few minutes ago, and I'm so glad I did, because this is one of my favorite. Jim, this is my favorite story about you, actually. It was.
Do I want to hear it?
I think you should want to hear it. This is a pretty good one, and it's very, very short. It's about a paper you once suggested should be written. And what you said was there should be a paper called Erdős Numbers Are Trivial by everybody. Yeah, I always remembered that one. That was a good one. So Jim had a nice house, not far from where I was renting a room that year, 1982 to 83. His oldest daughter was in 8th grade, I think, and his twin daughters were in 6th grade. I guess, they're about 90 now or something. I don't know. I mean, a lot of years have gone by, but this was a long time ago. And Jim, you had a small dog, a really small dog. It looked like a dust mop. And I was trying to remember the name, and I kind of sort of did. And I asked Roman, and he sort of, but Roman and I collaborated, and we think we know the name of the dog. We think it was Bruiser.
That's,
okay?
you're absolutely right.
Dog. Is that right?
Bruiser. And he was a bruiser, yes.
Was he really this little tiny dust mop dog was a bruiser?
No, he wasn't.
Okay, that's a kind dog. Yeah. So anyhow, I now have joint work with Roman on coming up with that name. But my point really is just to sort of, this is my kind of indirect way of mentioning what a nice complete life Jim was living with the family thing, his 3 kids, his research and his teaching, and he cleared trails in his spare time. I guess you don't do that anymore because you don't live up there anymore. Did you do that for a lot of years?
No, I did that for about 10 or 15 years, but I didn't anymore.
Okay. So anyhow, I thought that was pretty cool.
So
clearing trails.
One thing I do remember though is that you gave my kids, or you lent them, a version of Pong, I think it was.
Really?
The computer game, Pong.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Like
huh? Yeah, my dad gave me a console with Pong. That must have been one of the very first times anything like that had been given to me. I wonder if I brought it with me to Connecticut and dumped it on you. I don't remember.
I don't know if you lent it or gave it or what, but they still remember that.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Wow. So I'm going to tell another story about you, Jim. You, I think, really cared a lot about teaching, and you also, I think, had an interesting attitude about grading. And what I seem to recall is that you felt that grading, in a way, was you doing corporations' job for them. Like, when they're ready to hire somebody, they should interview that person and figure out if that person's any good and make a decision, and not put that work off on you to give this one grade that they can just use for a GPA and decide whether to hire somebody. And I don't know, did you ever actually just give everybody an A, sort of?
No.
Just based on, okay.
No.
But were you tempted?
I didn't know. No, I graded what I considered fairly at the time.
Okay. Am I representing your attitude
But
about
yeah, I think
corporations and grading?
yeah, I did think that at one time. Yeah.
Okay. I think you were ahead of your time. There's more anti-corporation feeling going around recently. I feel it when I hear of the bowl games. There's actually a Pop-Tarts bowl. I mean, I'm waiting for the Lysol toilet bowl. That I think it's gonna just do it in for me. Okay, in 2014, I got drunk at a conference dinner. This was in the Vienna Year of Logic. And Ali spotted me, and I was so thrilled to see him again after 30 years or something. And he invited, well, he didn't, I'm sorry. I invited myself.
No, that's not
Hey,
true.
Ali, why don't you invite me to spend the summer in Gothenburg next year? And amazingly, I don't know if you were drunk too, Ali, but you said you might do that, and then you did. And my wife and I spent pretty much the whole summer in 2015 in Gothenburg. That's the only exception in a major way to those 40 years I haven't done Logic. That was a lot of fun. Now, I had a reason for bringing that up. Oh yeah, the reason for bringing that up and what that has to do with Jim is that part of my preparation after all these years of not doing Logic was to get a copy of Jim and Roman's book on the structure models of piano arithmetic. And it was a little depressing how hard I had to work to get through part of the introduction, but I did learn an amazing amount just from part of the introduction and a brief scan of the rest of the book. I mean, I'm just awestruck by how much you guys put in that book. That's just amazing to me. I guess most of you here being MOPA people are well aware of that, but I wanted to express that I'm impressed with that book. Also, several people have mentioned this in the talk already, what I'm about to say, but I was kind of amazed to learn that Jim did all this work, not just in Logic, but in, combinatorics, graph theory, stuff like that. That was kind of possibly an explanation for why in 1987, Jim was visiting Austin, Texas, where I was at the time. And I was very excited to show him that this computer program that I was working on that does proofs, with that program, I could prove the exponent 2 version of Ramsey's theorem. And Jim, I don't know if you remember this, but I was like, look, I proved the exponent 2 version of Ramsey's theorem with this software. And Jim, I think you were like, but okay, but that's a trivial theorem. And to me, this is not to say that somehow Jim was being mean. He really was genuinely surprised that that was a big deal. I think what it just showed was that Jim was still a mathematician and I wasn't. I'd moved on to this other area of mechanizing mathematics with computers. But Jim has stayed with math all this time, which I think is cool. I had the opportunity a couple of times to see what a great relationship Jim and Sue have. One time they were in Austin, where I was still living at the time, and they were on their way back east from Tucson, where they were staying in the winter, as they typically do. And the four of us, my wife Holly and I, together with Jim and Sue, we went for a meal at a Mexican restaurant. It was a really random one. I don't know why we went there. First, I'll ask you, Jim, do you think you were the one who suggested Mexican food because we were in Austin? That's the way I remember it.
It could be, but I think you picked the restaurant.
But I picked we called it the cheesy Mexican.
Because we didn't know about restaurants.
Yeah, and I don't know why we picked that kind of pretty crappy one, but what was fun about it, do you remember what happened while we were at the restaurant?
Well, there was a singer. Is that right?
It was a whole little mariachi band, yeah.
Oh, maybe that's what it was. Okay.
Yeah, there was a mariachi band just came up to our table and started blasting out their music. And I kind of enjoyed it. You seemed to enjoy it too. It made the thing kind of extra festive, I think. Holly hates mariachi music, by the way, but I think she enjoyed it too, just in that one instance. Anyhow, that was kind of a little fun memory I have of time we spent together. Okay, I want to say what I'm about to say, I already had prepared, but two other people have already mentioned this. So all that does is prove how significant and important this really is. So I'm going to get serious now. And I'm going to elaborate a little. UConn didn't just win the women's basketball national championship this year, they obliterated a really good South Carolina team by 23 points. So congratulations. I mean, that was really amazing. Jim, do you want to talk at all about your, support and excitement over UConn's women's basketball team over the years and how they came back this year? Anything?
We went to game. Well, we don't. We moved away from stores 7 years ago. But we watch all the games that we can on television. But we went to, we could walk to the game, to Gamble, and we did often, and watch the games there, men and women. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because men have also had a pretty good team at times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Anything else about basketball you want to add?
no.
Okay. All right. I just want to close by saying thanks, Jim, for taking me under your wing in 1982 and your friendship over the years, and happy birthday. And thank you all for listening. And since there's a little extra time, maybe somebody else wants to add a story or two. I'm stopping right here.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Let's all thank Matt. Thank you, Matt, for that reflection. And I'll stop the recording, and we can chat until Roman is ready for the closing remarks.